At the start of the week, I uploaded a rapid summary of mine and Matt Lowne's trip to Paris for the Kerbal Space Contest, and while Matt is uploading a much more in-depth video later today, a lot of you asked for the uncut video of our presentation to the judges. Now, we actually did two presentations, one that was limited to just 7 minutes, which we only just got done in time, and then a longer form presentation with more relaxed time constraints in the main auditorium. So I'm showing the video of the second one, but I'll have the questions from both presentations. Enjoy, Penguinauts.
First group is Ceres and the Beardy grids.
Hey! You have to open it in the PowerPoint.
Hello, we are the Beardy Brits. So apologies that our talk's in English or French, because we're English and stupid. Beardy Brits, because we're British and couldn't bother to shave. Go to the next slide. So my name's Matt Lowne. I was the flight director for our team.
My name's Ollie, also known as the Beardy Penguin online, and I was the mission architect, so to speak. So we used a Falcon 9 for every single spacecraft we launched. We wanted to keep our mission as realistic as possible, and by reusing the first stage, we were able to save 225 tons of CO2 per launch, which isn't much, but it all starts to add up. The fuel cost really ended up being the most expensive part, sustainability-wise. So we didn't actually reuse the second stage, but we did make sure we deorbited it either into Earth or into the Moon to make sure we didn't generate any space debris. So we had 3 phases to our plan. We went a little bit overboard, did a bit more than just 10 tons to Mars. So our first phase was lunar infrastructure, consisting of a space station, a surface base, and then a fuel shuttle between them. As we said, fuel is the most expensive part, so we tried to mine as much as possible, then it's free. The second phase was our Mars infrastructure, so we had not only a transfer vehicle, but a habitat and a rover, which themselves were more than 10 tons, and then we also sent a crew ascent vehicle. And then in the third phase, we also did a full crewed mission to take advantage of that infrastructure and show how using the Moon would actually lead to a more sustainable Mars exploration program. So our first phase, we have our Galileo gateway. We have the cost and the mass of each of our spacecraft. So the cost, again, is in tons of CO2 produced by launching it, not including the cost of the Falcon 9, which each time we launched was 3,400. Next, we had our mining base, which was a mobile base that we landed at Shackleton Crater at the south pole of the Moon. Then after that, we had our shuttle that moved between them, so it could transport 87 tons of propellant. And once it was launched, it didn't need to be replaced. It could just keep transporting fuel between the surface and the orbiting space station. So into phase 2, we have our transfer vehicle, essentially just a giant fuel tank with an engine. It was the same size as our fuel shuttle, essentially, so we could fuel it entirely with one trip. We launched it without much fuel in it, and then fueled it at the gateway, and you'll see a bit more of that later. After that, we have our habitat and our rover, so in order to fit them into fairings, the habitat is actually inflatable. We used some robotic parts for that, and the habitat was landed under its own power. The rover used a sky crane. Then we have our crew return vehicle, which makes its own fuel on Mars. In reality, that would be the Sabatier process, but of course using drills and ore here to work within the limitations of Kerbal Space Program. And finally, we had our crewed mission. We thought, well, we've got all this infrastructure, let's launch a mission, land some crew on Mars, see how much it takes to launch that, and then see how many crewed missions would it actually take before that breaks even, before using the Moon then actually cause you to have a much more sustainable program than just going directly to Mars. And so Matt's going to walk you through the execution of that mission.
Thank you. So just to give you an overview of the Falcon 9 in action. So obviously it goes around 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 is the launch. 2 is the detachment. I don't know how clear it is for you guys, but basically we always detach the Falcon 9 first stage with 900 meters per second remaining. That gave us plenty of fuel to do a landing back by the Kerbal Space Center, safe distance of the buildings, of course, in picture 4. And then part of the first phase was the Gateway Station, which was a monolithic station inserted into a polar moon orbit. So there it is there. So you can see it's arriving by the Falcon 9 second stage. That was then put on a suborbital trajectory around the moon, so it could be detached, crashed, but the station itself could use its boost engines, which would already maintain its orbit to get back into a safe orbit, basically. And then 3 is all deployed, 4 is the result of our ore scan. So then we could do the mining base mission. So picture 1 is it arriving at the moon, again by Falcon 9 second stage, which we could then deorbit, detach. And then picture 2, you can see the sky crane just about that lands the rover on the surface. It's got those landing legs that not only brace the landing to protect the wheels, but they also add some stability once it's arrived at its mining location, which you can see in picture 4 is the edge of the Shackleton crater. You've got those solar panels and radiators deployed. And the next slide is the arrival of the fuel shuttle. So this didn't get there by Falcon 9 second stage because it's the heaviest payload basically. So Falcon 9 second stage just re-entered Earth's atmosphere. And because this is basically just a fuel tank and nothing else, it easily had enough fuel to reach the moon, landed by the mining base, which then connected to it via that robot arm, and then it could reach orbit again, dock to the Gateway space station in picture 3. Here's the arrival of the transfer vehicle, so there it is arriving by Falcon 9, second stage. You know this goes by now. There it is docked, so the 2 orange tanks of the lunar shuttle are exactly the same as the 2 fuel tanks on the interplanetary transport stage. It's nice and easy to just transfer all the fuel across. And then orbital assembly, so all of those units that Ollie talked about are inside those 3 kind of protective aeropods there that will enter Mars' atmosphere individually. So they were assembled, just back to the previous slide, sorry. So they're all assembled in the top picture in low Earth orbit, but at that point there wasn't sufficient delta V to get to Mars right away. So the second picture at the bottom, we went back to the moon base, refueled at the Gateway station again, thanks to the lander there, and then the whole thing then had enough fuel to get to Mars. Which, there it is, leaving the station, the space station, yeah. There it is, arriving at Mars. So we didn't use any aero captures or anything, it was all done under engine power. There is one picture there of one of the modules entering the atmosphere. I think that's the rover. So it's in that protective aero shell. You can see the top bit there, that's got the deorbit engines that allowed it to separate from the full sequence and deorbit and get down to the surface. So those are 3 modules. On the left is the habitation module. So obviously we've got the inflatable docking port and those 2 arms. We kind of like made those like a simulated inflatable module. So they kind of extend out by pistons. And we've got that extendable aerial tower there. We have the lander, which we use in situ resource utilization to refuel, whilst we wait for kind of the 2 years to elapse for the next Mars transfer window for the crew. And then the rover is also there. That landed by a sky crane and parachute. Yeah, unfortunately, because of time constraints, Kerbal Space Program landing stuff on a large celestial body with an atmosphere, it's a bit more trial and error, rather than being able to do anything accurately without additional mods, which obviously we couldn't install. So we aimed at kind of 30-kilometer separation-ish between the modules, which I think we did, which works because we have the rover that can transport crew between the HAB module and the Ascent module. So it all works, but we thought for artistic liberty, we thought we'd showcase what they would look like together. So on the next slide, our interpretation of the rules that once you've established things can do what we said they can do, we can then put them where we actually wanted them to be. So that's the whole thing there. So you can see that the drill is deployed for the Mars Ascent stage. For the next 2 years, I can just generate its own fuel. And then 2 years later, we get to the next Mars transfer window, so we can do the crewed mission. Okay, I got ahead of myself. So we left Mars transfer vehicle in Mars orbit. We then get that back to Earth. So it's a bit of a messy screenshot, but you can just about see. So Mars is kind of that orangish body on the right. You can see the blue line for the transfer vehicle to get back to Earth. And the next picture should show it arriving back at Earth. Again, I'm not sure if the Delta V readouts are quite visible, but there is enough Delta V there basically to circularize Earth without requiring air braking, and then once it's captured, the shuttle at the Gateway station can then capture it, refuel it, and reuse it basically. So then the crewed missions, there it is launching by Falcon 9, there it is arriving at Mars. We've got those 2 arms there that kind of extended out, and that rotates, it's on a servo, so the astronauts can kind of be in there, so they can be in a simulated 1G environment, affect things like bone and muscle density loss and retinal problems. And there it is touching down, kind of red dragon stars. We've got those retro rockets, and we've got some parachutes just to help it out. And then there's the crew at our little base area. And then that's the upper stage of the Mars ascent vehicle. So it's kind of a two-stage thing. The bottom stage has all the mining stuff and engines that can land itself propulsively. And then that's the upper stage that just detaches upon liftoff, a bit like the Apollo lander. It gets back to orbit. There's a, if you just go back a second. So again, the orbital stuff's at the top, but that's a circular orbit. It's got over 1 kilometer per second of LTV remaining. So enough to rendezvous with the transfer vehicle, which is all it needs to do. And then I'll hand you back over to Ollie to do some maths.
So while Matt was doing his fancy flying, I was there with a pen and paper doing lots of maths. So yeah, our rover and habitation module together already went sort of over the 10-ton target. We thought that was a sort of a minimum target, but we did a bit more than that. We obviously had the ascent vehicle as well, so we sent 25.5 tons to the Martian surface in our sort of first mission. And then a lot of numbers here. The only important one really is that the cost of landing everything with 7 launches of the Falcon 9 for the infrastructure was 28,500-ish tons, with 174 tons of propellant being mined from the moon. Then sending the mission with an extra Falcon 9, sending the crew using that infrastructure, used a further 4,000. But then now you have that infrastructure established, it only takes 8,000 tons. I say only, to launch a new crew module and a new Mars ascent vehicle each time you want to use that to go to Mars. So it's 8,000 tons. So we thought we'd compare that with the cost of going directly to Mars. And you'll see that the initial cost is lower, but each subsequent mission has to launch a new transfer vehicle and be fully fueled as well. And that really starts to add up. So if we go to the next slide, we see after 5 missions, it breaks even. So you have the cumulative cost of sending more missions. By the time you send your 6th mission to Mars, you are being much more sustainable than going directly there. So essentially proving that, yes, it is worth using lunar infrastructure to support your Martian exploration program. Thank you for putting up with us this evening.
No questions there, right? Let's go.
So when you say 5 missions to basically get first, is it the mission one ship going to Mars, or is it just like the 7 launches?
So yeah, to establish everything that we did, which is how we did this for this event, it takes a lot more because we've got to establish the mining station on the moon, the shuttle that goes between that and the gateway station, the habitation module and the rover. But all of that stuff, once it's launched, and the transfer vehicle, but once all that's launched, it's there. So the only things that need launching after that is just 1 Falcon 9 to put a crew module in orbit, and 1 Falcon 9 to place another Mars ascent vehicle on the surface of Mars, because that's extended for the mission. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so if you're using the infrastructure, it's 2 launches each time you're going to Mars. So just those 2 that Matt mentioned. If you're not using the infrastructure, you have a 3rd launch, which is that transfer vehicle. Since you can't reuse that, you're not refueling that. So it's that cost that starts to sort of pay for itself in the long run.
How did you find the time to do all of that?
How did we find the time to do all of that? Lots of muscle memory, I think particularly on Matt's part, if you were adding things like that.
Caffeine, yeah. About 4 hours, yeah.
And a little nap.
Yes.
Speaking of muscle memory, the Falcon 9 launch vehicle you guys made, recognizing especially the landing legs, you guys use tracking tech or pilot tech, something like that
For the landing legs? So we tried to make it aesthetically look like the Falcon 9 landing leg. So it's an alligator hinge is the actual mechanism, and then we've got 2 wing strakes. It's one of the first slides, I think, if you wanted to get a picture up of it. That's good, yeah. So yeah, you can sort of see them folded up against the side of the booster, and then they unfold. Don't know if you can quite see the alligator hinge, but we basically use the breaking ground robotic parts. Yeah, I think it's great.
It did wobble a bit.
Wobbled a bit, but you know. We get F5 in time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next time you only will have 6 hours.
I don't know what's most impressive, the amount of stuff you managed to do in 24 hours, or the amount of slides you managed to do.
The worst thing is that the both were sleeping together. Not even 24 hours.
I have to figure out how to turn off the French language on the computer.
It took you 6 hours.
To take the keyboard apart.
Did you fix that at the end? Or is someone gonna?
Oh, we didn't change it back.
Oh, we didn't change it back.
Oh, that's gonna be funny for the next people.
Hellman's problem.
Yeah, exactly. That was very good. So basically you managed to fly everything except for the landing accuracy thing. But I guess that's.
But we had the rovers kind of
Yeah.
drive between them, so just for artistic
It's
license.
probably very nice.
Yeah.
Well,
One question.
Yeah.
On the architecture without crew mission, so you managed to land the three, but without the accuracy that it was looking
Yeah,
for?
so we had to accept that there was just not enough time to get the accurate landing that we would have liked. So
Yeah,
we kind of designed everything to have worked. And during the intro rules with Ruben, he kind of said that once you've proven everything works, which we did, you can then use cheats to redo it, basically.
So can you just argument a little bit on the way the landing has been done for the three of the modules that you used?
What was the
way you landed it?
Yeah, so the landing is here. So this is a detachable thing, so that detaches and then drops down to the surface, and that's it there. So it's got these retro rockets to kind of do the landing, facilitated by parachutes. But obviously Mars atmosphere quite thin, so we just need the rockets just to do the landing.
But this one was when you were as a crew in mission, but for the previous one?
The modules. So show you the modules.
Yeah.
So which slide are we?
It's a little ways back.
Okay.
Oh, go forward.
Oh.
You went past it.
That one?
There we go.
Yeah. This one. Yeah. Thanks. How did you?
Yeah, so we had these engines at the top, which just allowed it to lower its orbit into the atmosphere. And then once we'd gone through the initial entry in the heat phase, we detached this fairing around it. And then they had parachutes and engines. So if you go to the next slide, you can see some of the, so you can see we've got the engines here, and we had parachutes on the top. And this was all inflatable, so these modules just popped out once it was landed. So it fits into the fairing, then once it's deployed and landed, those extend. And Matt was very proud of his communications dish that spins on a little loop. But we don't have time to make a little gif of that. But
yeah, and this is the landing phase. So this thing, these engines here, just for the landing. So it's like Apollo, really, and it's just that bit there that flies up off the top. There was a sky crane, but that is gone. But it was a very similar design to the sky crane we used for the moon lander. So.
Okay, thanks.
And just the model ship, was it assembled in moon orbit or Earth orbit? Like the big one.
So it was all assembled in low Earth orbit.
Low Earth orbit.
Yeah, and then the transfer vehicle left the moon, docked with it. Obviously, that whole maneuver left it without enough fuel, so they all went back to the moon, then it refueled again using the reusable lander, and then we went to Mars after that.
Okay, directly from the moon.
Well, we went from the moon, and then
from the moon to Mars.
Obviously.
Yeah.
For obvious technical reasons. But.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took 2 refueling trips to fuel the whole mission at once.
Yeah.
And how many launches did it take to achieve this?
So with the infrastructure, it's 7 launches and then 1 extra launch for the crewed mission. Without it, it was 3 launches.
So that's 1 Falcon 9, 1 Falcon 9, 1 Falcon 9, and 1 Falcon 9. This is all one module.
Yeah, so everything used 1 Falcon launch, so each launch was exactly the same cost. All the maths is on the maths slides.
So there's a lot of rockets initially, with the idea being that now it's all there. Future Mars missions only require 2 Falcon 9s.
Yeah, you just have to launch a new ascent vehicle and a new crew.
Yeah, new Mars ascent, new crew transfer.
Great. Any more questions? Thank you very much.
Time to announce the second place for this challenge. Second place is for the instructor. Obviously, the first place is for you for the great bits.
I must admit this is a bit humiliating, but you were really the best. So I want to thank you for entering that much French for that long, and I also want to thank the rest of the Carbon Space Challenge team. So Jan, our president, who organized most of the challenge. We have machinists there, SSTO specialist. Arthur is there, did a lot of things, and also Only Light Matters, which is sadly in Kourou. I mean, it's not sad actually. He's probably very glad to be in Kourou.
A massive thank you to my patrons and donators for their generous support, and an extra special thank you to the Amazing Steak, Dakota Clark, Olaf Hammerhand, Madsaw, Peter Lushtinets, Simone67, Lady Lagsalot, Scott Milligan, Jesse Smith, NX74656, Jordan Millward, Darth Malachor, Frosty Moon, and Luna Nicole the Fox.